The time, Space Century 342. The place, the three-planet Algol solar system located deep in the Andromeda Galaxy. Under the democratic rule of King Lazic, life was good as he provided everything his people could want. Space travel had been discovered 200 years before, and deep space shuttles had allowed colonization of Motavia and Dazorus, the other worlds of the Algol star system. But slowly over time, things began to change. It started with a new religion, which was rumored to have come from another galaxy. The dark priests of this religion, never seen by any mortal, promised immortality to all who joined. You would live forever. King Lazic was getting old. The idea of living forever appealed to him, so he became the first to join. Then he changed. It started with the threatening suit of armor the priests made for him. The armor looked evil and corrupt, and that's how Lazic began to rule his people. Outrageous taxes became a burden on everyone. Business on all three planets shut down, and entire towns fell into decay. There was no way for the people to make any money. As time passed, the people suffered. Horrible creatures and monsters began to stalk all three worlds. When the dead came back to life, the people feared the worst and guessed the truth. Through black magic, Lazic had become an evil tyrant. But where there is evil, there is also always good. Brave individuals began to rally in secret against Lazic, but his robot cops were ruthless in hunting out these defenders of the people. One was Nero, a spaceport worker in Kamenit, the central town on Palma. Long ago, his father had disappeared, trying to learn Lazic's evil secrets. Now the robot cops had crushed Nero as well. Before he died, he passed on his short sword and his quest to his sister Alice. He also told her to find a brave fighter named Odin. Alice raised the sword to the sky and vowed that Nero's death would not go unavenged. Welcome to the 9th episode of Retrotopia. My name is Sam, and this week Brian and I will be discussing the classic Sega Mega Drive game Phantasy Star. Before we get to the show, we'd like to hear from you, and you can reach us on Twitter at RetrotopiaPod, email us at retrotopiapodcast@gmail.com. You can drop a comment in the Spotify podcast comment section, or you can join our Discord with the link in the description of this podcast. Now that we have that done, I'd like to give Brian a chance to say hello. What's new on your side of the border there, Brian?
Well, it's Boxing Day here in Canada, which means Christmas is finally over, thank God.
Yeah.
Big family meal, but we don't do turkey. Like, we kind of gave up the whole turkey dinner family experience because it was just starting to cost a lot of money, and then we'd end up with leftovers we can never finish. So we did spaghetti yesterday, and I fucked it up, which really sucked.
Oh, how do you...
I made a big batch because I was going to freeze some of it there, and when I put it into the big pot, I used a stock pot because the amount I had, which was a wrong choice because it was too thin, and some of the tomatoes burnt on the bottom, so my house smelled like burnt tomato for 2 days.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we finally got rid of the smell today.
By farting.
Yeah, so how was your Christmas, Sam?
It was okay. It was fine. The whole season is winding down, the Christmas season, so that I'm excited for. Just felt a little weird this year. Maybe it was all the construction going on in the house. Maybe it was just not being settled yet or what, but it's good to be on the other end of it.
Yeah, it's the year's almost over. It's 2024 will be the year of, Sam and Brian, we'll call it that.
Yes.
I'm definitely looking forward to basically this week is just my last week of hectic activities. Like, I'm going to go visit my dad tomorrow, so that's a bit of traveling, and then once that's all done, I get to come home and I just get to kind of sit and unwind finally.
Nice, yeah. So I've got a short 3-day work week starting tomorrow, which is Wednesday, and then we're into New Year's weekend. So
Yeah.
do you do a lot for New Year's?
Nothing. I don't even stay up till midnight anymore.
Yeah, me neither. I might make it till midnight, but I don't know. I'm by myself this year, so maybe I'll try to find something to do. But otherwise, nope.
Just the older I got, the less. I don't go out and party drink anymore. So heading downtown and having a big hoorah with everybody just isn't my thing.
No, not at all.
Yeah, and staying up till midnight means I sleep in a little bit later, and it always makes my next day feel kind of wrecked or ruined. It's shorter because I wake up later. I don't
Yeah,
know. It's hard to
yeah.
explain.
No, I know exactly what you mean. All right. Well, what have you been playing this week aside from Phantasy Star?
Yeah, I played Phantasy Star. Played it right until the last boss, and I wasn't able to beat him. But we'll get into that later because screw him. Started, or I didn't start, but I picked up Breath of Fire 2 as well for
Ooh.
another podcast host who asked me to do that one with him.
Oh, all
He
right.
mentioned he was starting it, so I figured I'd start it or restart it as well. So I got to get through that.
Have you played it before?
Long time ago.
I played the
Like,
first one, and it's fine.
yeah, well, it's a fine RPG. Like, they're fine games, but the first one really lacked in direction there, and
Yeah.
if like I used a walkthrough on the first one there because I was kind of at a time crunch and I was just running in circles.
Yeah.
And when I found when you can transform into dragons, when I found the ultimate dragon form there, all of a
Yeah.
sudden the game became too easy. You just use that dragon form and just
Yeah.
run through everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember that. But I also remember that it's kind of such an obscure title that it's kind of hard to find a good coherent walkthrough unless you found one.
No, I did. It wasn't hard.
Oh, well.
I just went to Google and typed in Breath of Fire walkthrough, and boom, like 15 options showed up. Plus, there's still GameFAQs walkthroughs.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the one I used or not. The ones that are like kind of look like they're typed in Notepad.
Yeah. Well, ones that are done by community people who actually take the time to, or took the time to type them out back in the day.
Yeah, like
Everybody just
those.
records a video and you just follow it.
I used to have like for Final Fantasy 8, I think specifically, I used to have that like game FAQ like printed out on sheets of computer paper and
Oh,
stapled
yeah.
together. It
That
was
was
like,
during my phase when I bought the player's
yeah,
guide every time I bought a game. So I got like all the Final Fantasies that I could get my grubby little hands on, and Final Fantasy 8's one of them.
you still got them?
Oh, yeah. They're sitting right
Nice.
beside me. I'm not getting rid of those. Those things are too valuable to me.
Yeah, those are cool. All right. Well, oh, for me, I guess I also just wrapped Fantasy Star. That's pretty much what I've been playing because I've had to kind of shotgun it the past few days to keep myself caught up. But I am looking forward to getting into our games for next week, Jungle Strike and Desert Strike.
Yeah,
So
and you're going to be playing the Genesis versions, right?
yes, for
Yeah, and
sure,
I'm gonna
because they
take
are
on the Super Nintendo ones.
because the Genesis versions are superior.
Probably, but Super Nintendo outsold it. Let's just go that way.
Yeah, that's because more people had Super Nintendos.
Yeah. But we'll
All
get
right.
into that fight one day. We'll have Genesis versus Super Nintendo, Return to the Console Wars
Yeah, we
episode.
can do that. All right. Well, before we get to the game, we'd like to ask our listeners some questions, which Brian and I will take a shot at giving a good answer to. And if not, then we'll give some form of answer, right?
Yeah, and we opened it up in our Discord there to some of the people who've already joined, and a couple of our friends popped in and threw us a question or two just to help us out.
Yeah. So if you'd like to, and you're listening and you're not a part of our Discord, join our Discord. And it's absolutely free. It's in the description of the show, and you can ask us questions.
And you can join a good community of people and pickle.
Oh, that too. Yeah. So let's get to our first one, shall we? Our first question comes from Unbuckled Cape from the Unbuckled Comics podcast, who says, I now understand you guys. I immediately wanted to ask dumb questions just to mess with yous, but I'll refrain. Be the bigger man and ask, how are you now? Good, and you?
Oh, yep.
Uh, yep. How about you? How about you, Brian?
I'm good there. Yeah. How are you now, Wayne? I just finished Letterkenny, the new season today, so.
Oh shit! I gotta watch that. It's the 26th. It just dropped here in the States.
Yeah, well, you're already a day behind.
I know. But at least it's popular enough that we pretty much get it right away instead of having to wait.
Yeah, like Shorzy.
Yeah. But here's his actual question. He writes, "Oh, and forget Sega Genesis versus SNES. I want to know light beer versus dark beer." Brian, what's your take?
Oh, what do you mean in dark beer? Like, are you
Hmm.
talking like the shade of the beer? Like, light beer sounds like Coors Light, Bud Light, and all that kind of stuff. But dark beer, I mean, there's beers called dark.
Yeah, let's go with a dark versus light color.
Okay, so if we're going that route, then we're not actually talking like the Bud Lights and stuff like that. I like a nice golden IPA. It's my go-to beer. So
Uh,
kind of dark, but not dark.
yeah, it's like an amber almost, or
Yeah, it's kind of like a waffle answer, but
somewhere in the middle.
but if you're going like Coors Light versus a good dark beer, then I'm going to good dark beer because Coors Light is, like fucking in a canoe. It's fucking close to water.
Well, I'd say dark beer wise, I love my porters and I like stouts. I like a heavy stout, but you can't really drink too many of those.
No, a stout's a sipping beer. You're
Yeah.
sitting there in the long haul listening to that guy in the guitar in the pub there try to,
Yes.
do covers, right?
Yes. And the last time I had a Guinness, I didn't really enjoy it. It's kind of weird. But I used to
Yeah,
like
you
Guinness.
got to be in the mood. Like,
You really do.
I've never met anybody who sits there and like says, I exclusively drink Guinness. No, I'm in the mood for a Guinness, is
Yeah.
what somebody always says.
It was weird. But for pure volume, I like my PBRs. So
Of course.
that's my poison of choice. So I don't know if that really answered the question. It didn't give us a definitive light versus
No,
dark.
it's pretty weak there on Buckled. Pretty weak. You got to be more specific next time.
All right, and our next question comes from Savagery 42, the Hoagie Man.
Or 82.
482. Is that what he said?
No, you said 42.
42. I thought I snuck an 80 in there. Whatever.
Oh,
Shimmy
maybe
that
it was
80 in
so
there.
fast there, fucking McMurray.
Yeah. 42. All right. Which food would you rather put tacos into? A pizza or a hoagie?
Put tacos into
Like
taco stuffed crust pizza.
oh, that sounds pretty good. But
Actually, it does. I'm kind of sold on the pizza idea now.
yeah, I think I thought I got a chance to think about this a little bit before we started recording, and I think I am on the pizza train.
Yeah, definitely. No offense to the hoagie man, but hoagies can't beat pizzas because pizza has the advantage of being a pizza.
Also, well, tacos, I guess, but I don't know. If a taco, I mean, I know a taco is not a sandwich, but if you're gonna put taco stuff into a sandwich, I think I just would eat a taco.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense too. I mean, you're just putting ground beef and taco seasoning on a pizza, so.
Oh, it's so good though.
Oh yeah. All right. Thanks for the questions, guys.
Yeah, those are the questions. Those were good ones. So keep them coming every week. We'll obviously, if you're not on the Discord again, we'll plug it one more time. Join our Discord; it's fun, and you can ask us questions. So with that, let's move on to the game itself, and we'll start with Brian telling us a little bit more about the game.
Phantasy Star is a role-playing game developed by Sega for the Master System in 1987. In the game, we join Alice and her companions on a journey across multiple planets to defeat the evil King Lazic. Phantasy Star is an example of an early Japanese RPG, or JRPG, including random enemy encounters and a leveling system. The game was developed by Sega to compete with the increasing popularity of the RPG genre, with Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior being released in 1986 and Final Fantasy, which was released only 2 days before Phantasy Star on the Famicom. Phantasy Star is unique among JRPGs of the time, notably for its 3D dungeon navigation, the female main protagonist, and early attempts at some animated cutscenes. These elements are considered revolutionary or pioneering by modern commentators. The game was also unique for its setting, a fantasy and science fiction blend, taking its influences from Star Wars. The game is also notable for its size at the time, with the development team using a new and innovative method to fit the game on a 4MB cartridge. At its release, Phantasy Star was acclaimed by critics for its graphics and gameplay. One drawback, however, was that the battery save system on the cartridge caused the game to have a high sticker price for a new game of the time period. The game has 3 sequels for the Sega Genesis or the Mega Drive, and port on the Game Boy Advance. In 2003, a remake of the original Phantasy Star, called Phantasy Star Generation 1, was released for the PlayStation 2. A definitive Sega Ages version of the game was released in late 2018 for the Nintendo Switch, which features a screen-in-screen format that includes a map and party status on the display.
All right, thanks, Brian. This week, we asked some of our friends to post comments in the Discord about this game, and we'll read a few of them here. So, Brian, you want to take the first one?
Yeah, I'll take the first one. This one is from Zodiac, who is a very big Sega person and probably the person I respect the knowledge in Sega for the most. And he says Phantasy Star is easily better than the 2 games that came out alongside it that are far better known, Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. Might even be the best 8-bit RPG made of that. Oh, sorry. It may even be the best 8-bit RPG made of that era. Beautiful graphics and fantastic music combined with varied stages and areas to explore makes it a must play. But play it on the Switch as part of the Sega Ages collection unless you love graph paper.
I 100% agree about the Sega Ages collection
Yeah,
comment. Do
that
not
would have
play
been
this.
brutal if I had to go to the local, stationery store there and go get myself a book of graph paper for the
Yeah,
first time in 20 years.
yeah. And like there's some like fucky shit in some of those dungeons that like if you get like knocked back or go down a hole, it's like, where was I?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Zodiac. I'll take the next one. This is Retro Alcatraz, who says, Phantasy Star is a remarkable achievement for so humble a console and proof that my guys at Sega could hold their own in the RPG genre. Visually stunning for the time and with plenty of variation, Phantasy Star definitely deserves to be in the conversation of RPG greats, and it's grossly underrated. Just be sure to grind early on, or else you'll be fucked right out of the gate.
And I did that by getting lost for the
Yeah.
first 3 hours.
Yeah, we will obviously we'll talk about this in the game chat, but my Alice, the main character, was like way over leveled by the time
Yeah.
I figured out where the fuck to go.
Oh, yeah. All right. Last comes from Super Dave from the Anime Treehouse podcast. And he says Phantasy Star was a very pleasant surprise for me when I bought it on my Switch via the Sega Ages version. Although the beginning is indeed slow, grindy, and sometimes lethal, once I got my party together, the game practically flew by. I love the graphics and music and the little cutscenes. Very ambitious for its time.
For
Well
sure.
said.
Yeah, I agree. It is an ambitious game for its time. And it can be very lethal. It's like one of those games where there's certain points where you walk like a couple of squares in the overworld grid too far and you're into some shit that you can't
Yeah,
handle.
the invisible boundaries. That
Yes,
happened to me a few times.
absolutely. All right. So with that, let's get into the game discussion. So why did we pick this game? This game was actually my choice for our RPG of the month here for the month of January 2024.
Oh,
Sounds kind
December
of weird to say.
2023. No, wait.
Well,
Oh, no, you're right. It comes out after.
yeah,
Oh, man.
yeah, it comes out the beginning of the new year.
Time is linear, dude.
No, time is a circle. Happy
Of
New Year,
course.
everyone. Um, so I think I played this for the first time last winter and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely grindy and slow at times, but the 3D dungeon crawling and some of the planet hopping were really fun. And if you play it on the remastered Sega Ages version, it is definitely up-resed from the original 8-bit, and the music is up-resed as well. But it's really got that retro feel, but it looks really good and still plays the same. So it's a pretty faithful remaster.
Yeah,
Um,
and my history with this is literally you told me about it, and uh, reason I've never actually played a Fantasy Star is Fantasy Star Online came out, and I was like, oh, this looks like fun, so I played that. And I'm not a big online RPG guy, so
yeah, neither am I.
Fantasy Star Online never caught on with me, and I kind of associated the whole series with that one experience, and that's why I never kind of went back and tried this one out.
Just kind of soured you on the
Yeah,
franchise. Okay.
Probably, like, unjustifiably, but, I was young and dumb at the time, so it just kinda stuck with me.
Yeah, I don't, aside from having played it once before last year, I don't have any history with this. It was before my time. In fact, I'm not too much older than the game at all. So that's my history with it, is I don't have any. And I what made me want to play it last, like last winter, whenever I first played it, was I've got that Genesis collection on the Switch that's got like all those games, and it's like Phantasy Star 2, 3, and 4. And I always wondered, where the hell is Phantasy Star 1, and where can I find it? And I had stumbled across this Ages collection. So that's why I
Yeah.
was interested in it. That's why I played it.
Well, it's nice that these old games are being re-released and kind of updated without taking away their core that made them great in the first place. So this Sega Ages seemed to improve the game
Yeah,
to a playable level.
yeah, it's kind of analogous to like um the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. Like it just
Yeah,
touches them up, cleans up a little bit of stuff, makes them a little more playable, and now they're accessible to, a whole new generation of people that didn't get to play them.
yeah, and honestly, this is a game you should play. Like, big spoiler alert, it's not going to be the perfect game, but I honestly enjoyed my experience with this game, and I'm probably going to go jump into Fantasy Star 2 in the near future to just keep it going.
Hell yeah. Um so yeah, what were your initial thoughts though, playing this game
Um,
when you first got into it?
First thoughts, I thought I was playing a 16-bit game, to be honest. Like, when I jumped into it, I thought it was
Yeah.
like a really early era 16-bit game, and then uh, I kind of looked up some videos and I noticed they kind of touched up the graphics, like you said a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was enjoying, like, right from the get-go. I enjoyed the battle system. I enjoyed the walking around. It felt familiar right off the hop. Some stuff I had to get used to, like talking to people. I kept running into them by accident because I
Yeah.
kept forgetting that you talked automatically.
Yep.
Some couple of what weren't supposed to be puzzles turned out to be harder for me than should have been because you had to talk to the same guy 3 times. Like, who thinks about that kind of stuff? But
Yeah, I did not enjoy that little
yeah,
like ass pull.
other than that, it was I enjoyed the game.
Yeah, usually like in a video game, when someone tells me to fuck off, I just leave.
Yeah, like, well, reading through the walkthrough, it's like, oh, you got to talk. He's going to tell you to leave 2 times, and go back and talk to him a third time. I tried that with my wife. She told me to fuck off and threw a pillow at me.
Yeah, no, it just gets worse. Why would you go
Yeah,
back?
it's like, I'm just going to go hide in my office there and let her calm down a bit before she kills me.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, we talk to him a third time, and then he gets a restraining order. And he can't
Yeah.
he can't even go within like 5 squares of the building that he's in.
It's like you walk up to somebody, give me $100. Like, fuck off. No, give me $100. Fuck off. No, give me
Yeah,
$100. Yeah, okay, here you go.
yeah, here. Oh, since you asked 3 times, then
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the magic number.
That was weird. Are there any other RPGs that you can think of where you walk up? I think there are some where you have to walk up to people and like
Yeah, and I think it was all based off of the day when RPGs only had a limited number of buttons to use, so they wouldn't
yeah.
make a talk button the same as a an action button. And walking up to them just kind of like sets off the next event in the programming script. So
Yeah.
there was a couple, but I'm glad they got away from that.
I'm actually gonna look at something really quick. The Sega Master System, I don't think is a console that was too common here in North America. And they did have, okay, it was a 2-button controller. So it had a D-pad and 2 buttons.
So same as a Nintendo.
Right. So you weren't gonna just like waste a lot of time programming stuff to buttons because you only had 2 to work with. So that
Well, it
was
also might have been something they didn't think about at the time, like you know, twin sticks, one stick controlling the camera, the other stick controlling the character was an afterthought after the dual analog
yeah,
controllers came out. So it's the same idea with this. Maybe somebody thought about it like a few years later, and
yeah,
but I'd have to play Fantasy Star 2 to see if they actually changed that because you got 3 buttons on the Genesis controller, and you know Why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. Now at this point I've played Phantasy Star twice, so now I think it's time the next thing I play has got to be 2.
Yeah.
Um Another thing that I thought was a little odd and notable about the gameplay was that when you encounter an enemy, there's a lot of random encounters in this game.
No,
Uh,
there's two levels of random encounters. There's the first one where you can go from point A to point B, which is 50 miles without seeing an enemy.
right?
Then
Yeah.
there's a second one where you can't not fight an enemy every 2 steps.
Yes.
There's no in between.
Yeah. It's really inconsistent. But it just actually in the battle screen, I thought it was interesting, and I don't know of any other games that quite do this, but you had one type of enemy at a time that you were facing, but you could have up to like 5 or 6 of them. I called it like an enemy stack, where you'd have,
Yeah.
especially like in the beginning, there'd be those like little flies that were called swarms or something like that, and there'd be like 5 or 6 of them. And the interesting thing was you'd pick your command. Your characters aren't on the screen, so that's kind of like how Dragon Quest is. You just toggle through the menus for your characters that you have, and you select their attack, but they randomly attack
That
enemies in the
bothered me,
stack. It did bother me.
especially when one of the enemies there was like 1 hit point left, and then
Yes.
everybody attacked the guy with the most hit points, so you kept getting hit twice at the end of
Yes.
the, cycle.
Yeah, so you can get hit by the enemy for as many enemies as there are left alive in the stack. And
Yeah, and
so,
the
yeah.
only way you know how many enemies there are is you have a little window up at the top right of your battle screen there, and it stacks the enemies, and hence why you call it an enemy stack. But you're not fighting multiple types of enemies. It's always one type of enemy, certain number.
Yeah, it's almost like a shared hit point pool, but like divided into little silos of hit points, and each one that hits 0 means the enemy can attack one less time, is kind of the way I looked at it. Like if I encountered something and there were 3 and they each had, like 50 hit points, I was kind of thinking to myself, well, I've got one stronger enemy that's got 150 hit points, and that's what we have to get through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was my only gripe with the battle. Like, the menu system worked out fine. The
Yeah.
characters attack and they did what you told them to. You could predict what was going to happen, like with the attacks. So
A little bit, yeah.
yeah, and then there was a couple of weapons there, and like the laser gun, which does 20 damage to every enemy on the screen, which is kind of nice to have, but also weaker than his attack with like Odin's attack with a sword or an axe.
Yeah, that was a give and take.
Yeah,
I
there was
usually
no winning in that one.
Yeah, I didn't usually use the laser gun. As cool as it is when you've got multiple enemies, on screen. And 20 doesn't sound like a lot of damage, but like these enemies usually have like maybe like 150 hit points tops per
Yeah,
enemy.
and
So
20
20
knocks off a good chunk, especially if you're doing it every turn.
right. Yeah. 20 is a good chunk. Um but we mentioned this when we did the, just kind of the general information up top. But they did have to save some space on this cartridge because it was a pretty large game, and I thought maybe this battle system was kind of a way that they made their way around, um,
Oh,
saving a little bit of
absolutely, yeah.
space. Yeah.
Having one enemy on the screen. And considering how animated they are too, like, they're not just sitting there,
Yeah.
like, motionless, they actually have hit animations with them.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Like, think of like for reference for the listeners, if you haven't played this game, think of if you've played like one of the Game Boy Color Pokemon games that like kind of did things up, like Pokemon Crystal, where when you encounter a Pokemon, they do like a little shimmy or like a little move. It was kind of like that each time they attacked.
Yeah,
It's kind of cool.
it was fun. Like, the battle system is not at all my problem with this game. It was actually the part I enjoyed, and one of the I guess one of the problems with the battle system is it didn't always delineate when you're fighting a boss versus a regular, enemy.
Yeah.
So I ended up killing Medusa, and I didn't even realize I was fighting her.
Oh yeah. They don't like, you don't see them on the screen and then you have to approach them. They just pop up.
Yeah.
And then the battle music is always the same unless
Oh
you're
god,
like in
yeah.
the last battle. Which
Yeah.
yeah, speaking of which, let's talk about the music. Uh
Um, No, the music is great in this game, but it is not varied.
No, it's very repetitive, and I think that's another, um, just
8-bit. It's an 8-bit thing. Like
yeah,
you said, you can only fit so much stuff on there, and then unless they hire an orchestra for everybody who bought this game, you're going to get repetitive music.
yeah. The music and the sound effects get a little bit old, so I
Yeah,
found
except
that
for in the dungeons. The dungeons had the song there, and they had the synthetic drums with and
yeah.
I was all about that.
And that's definitely up-resed. If you're playing the ages version, the music is much better, but you can toggle it back to the 8-bit sound
Oh
effects and music.
no, no, no,
But
no,
no, it's
not
not.
with those synthetic drums.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved the dungeon theme was fine. It did get a little old after a while because every time you go into like a cave or anything where you're traveling in that kind of that kind of 3D hallway, it's like
Yeah.
the same. You're gonna hear the same thing. And then I think my favorite. Did you have a favorite?
Um, Besides the synthetic drums,
Yeah.
no.
No. There were two that stood out to me. I liked the like the vehicle or space travel theme, which I think we should probably play in the interludes between bits
Well, I
here of
will
the
make a
show.
note of that.
And then the boss dungeon theme was good too. Like the one at the end, like there was the regular dungeon theme, and there was like a souped up dungeon theme for like when you went into a place and they wanted to make you feel like, oh shit, like this place, is something special. So
Yeah, but um, overworld, like I have that overworld song burned into my brain
yeah, the one
because
from Palma.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just I think it was like maybe uh 5 notes, and then it just repeated itself over and over and over again.
Yes.
And
Um,
that one kind of got really, really repetitive. But one thing I like about video game music is it's not something that annoys you when you're playing the game. Like it's not something where you shut the volume down because you're just sick of it. It's good enough that you can play and not listen to it while you listen to it.
yeah, I know what you mean. But if it does get repetitive and annoying, you can mute the game and listen to episodes of Retrotopia.
Absolutely, that's what I do.
uh,
I'm not listening to them in the shower or while making love to pretty women.
that's what we do. Um, yeah, let's see what else can we talk about before we like just kind of get into the run through the game.
Oh, just the sound effects in this game are they're good. They tell you what's happening. Like they make the noise of the hits and they make the noise of the magic and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
I started to get annoyed at some of the sound effects. So again, like I just kind of turned it down and
Yeah.
listened to
So
some stuff.
before you get into the nitty gritty, there, I do actually have a couple more things.
Oh yeah, go
One
for
of
it.
the things I found frustrating in this game is how much stuff occupied your item uh,
Yes.
menu.
Yes.
So you get 3 pages of items, and I think there's about 10 to 12 items per page, and
Yeah.
you have to get these non. I don't know if you could sell them. I actually never tried to sell them, but
There's a
it
lot of
just
shit that you can't sell.
yeah, it just fills up. Like you have the road pass, and then all 3 vehicles, and all this other stuff that just fills it up. And by the end of it, you have about a page to use to fill up for items,
Yeah.
and it's just I hated it because you know I don't know how to say it, but I kind of like to manage my my items there, and a lot of these things should have been put underneath a special items menu so they didn't occupy your space.
Yeah,
The
like
other thing was getting in and out of vehicles by going into the menu. God, that drove me nuts. And you
yeah.
can't organize the menu, so you can't put them right at the front.
Yes, that was tricky. The menu system sucks. And like one vehicle that I found that I could sell um was the ice digger, and I got like 6,000 masitas. Those are the monies. I got 6,000 back for that.
Oh,
Um,
wow. I
but more
kept it.
valuable than the money was it freed up a spot for a burger, which is the
Yeah,
third
seriously.
item.
Like, there's one point where you have to go talk to the people at the spaceport, so they steal your passport just to free up a spot.
Yes, which is nice, but then it also means that you have to travel to other planets in a kind of a roundabout way. You have to, you have to go to another town and get on a
Yeah,
ship.
and that wasn't a huge deal. By that point, I'd never used the spaceport again.
Yeah, you just the only thing I did was like kind of pass through it to get to the town because
Yeah, exactly.
there is in the first town that you start in, it's is pretty nicely centrally located on the main planet that you're on, and there is a spot that you can heal for free, and I utilize that a ton so that I can
Yeah,
save
that
my
the every time you go back to Palma, you just take a trip over to that, first town and you heal there, and
Yep,
there's no well, there was a reason to use the hospitals on planets, but, if you were on your way just traveling, you just go back to Palma for a quick stop, and the whole thing
yep.
took you 5 minutes.
Oh, this is a good exploit for hospitals because basically it costs one Meseta, which is like Gil in Final Fantasy or whatever, it costs you one per hit point and per MP that you recover at the hospital. So your hospital bill can actually be pretty high if you're pretty beat up. But what I ended up doing was I would take Meow, the cat, who had like a really nice healing spell, and I would because I didn't use my magic in battle a lot because it was pretty limited.
Yeah,
But
and you don't have any items that replenish your
no,
friggin',
which
uh,
sucks. It
magic
sucks
points.
a lot. But anyways, like Meow, I would use Meow to heal everyone up pretty much all the way. And then all I would have to do is go to the hospital and replenish Meow's hit points for like 25 Macetas or whatever.
Yeah,
So
so
that was
that's
a
pretty smart, but I never had a problem with getting money in this game. Like, I
yeah,
always had, like, 60,000 in the bank.
60,000.
Well, I
Jeez.
got lost and,
Yeah, that's true. If you get lost, you're going to be battling a lot. And
do a lot of fights, you level up, like, 10 levels higher than you're supposed to be there, and
yeah,
you have all this friggin' money, and there's not a lot to buy in this game.
no, not really. I think that's probably one of the limitations was, item wise. Like I think the only healing items that you can use are the burgers, which
And the
heal
colas.
40, and the colas, which yeah, heal 10, which
And you always have to have a cola with you because every so often some guy asks for a cola.
yeah, the NPCs will be like, do you have a cola? And then there's one guy that you give a cola and he's just like, oh, cool, thanks. Do you have
"Oh,
a
it's
cola?
Pepsi, not Coke. Wait,
Yeah,
thanks,
no.
guy."
You just keep giving him colas and he doesn't tell you anything. Um And then, yeah, so if I could change something about the game, it would be, well, a few things, but one of the main things would be like make the burger your healing item. That's fine, but like I wish that the cola would replenish MP because that was always your like very most limited resource.
Yeah, or even if you did have an item that replenished MP, make it expensive or something like that, or a rare commodity. So, you still use it conservatively, but at the same time, you have it in that big fight.
Yes, but there were ways around using your MP that you could kind of save it because I really like made sure that I saved it for the final bosses at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I was the same way. I would never use my magic until I had to fight a boss or I knew I was going to be leaving the dungeon soon.
Right.
So it kind of takes away from the battle strategy if all you're going to do is attack for a while because you're, you know, basically penny pinching on your magic points.
Right. Yeah, because basically, yeah, another one of my well, I'll mention one of my other tricks that I found in the walkthrough that I used later on because it comes into play heavily at the end of the game when I needed to save all of my hit points and MP for the final bosses. But let's get into the characters. So there were four playable characters. There were only four, and there really isn't any customization. They're just kind of like they have their own little backstories and they have a linear progression, which I think was a little different for RPGs at the time. This one definitely told a very solid linear story.
Oh yeah, and it wasn't a bad story, but the characters they're very generic, and it's not like they really get a big story in the game. You know their motivation, but not a lot of time is spent on any specific character.
Right. Yeah. So, like right at the beginning of the game, there's like a little kind of little tiny 8-bit cutscene, which I guess for the time was probably really revolutionary. But for us, it's just like it's just a picture with some words. But um, it's a 1987 cutscene, and you see someone dying, and that turns out to be the brother of Alice, who is the main character, and that's Alice, Alis. So her brother is killed by Lassic, who is the evil king that you're going up against
Yeah,
throughout the
later called King Lazic in the game.
Lassic. Yeah, King
Not adding
Lassic.
anything to what you're saying, just
Yeah,
making my voice heard.
and she was so she vows to overthrow King Lazic and avenge her brother's death, and she's basically kind of a fighter with some limited magic skill. Um,
Yeah, and typical, I guess, hero of a story. She has a mission right off the bat, and there she has a reason to be, and she's going to kill Lazic to avenge her brother. And
yep.
you know, nothing special. She's no Terra from Final Fantasy VI.
No, but it was interesting that this is a pretty early on 8-bit RPG, and here you've got a female main character, which we hadn't seen yet in a Dragon Quest or a Final Fantasy or anything. So
No,
that's
but
pretty cool.
there has been like you got Metroid there, where surprised everybody with Samus Aris and Aaron and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
it's good to see that even in this time, female leads were still a thing.
Yes. Yeah. It was a nice touch. And then you've got Meow.
Meow.
Meow. It's Myau. So it's kind of a stylized meow like a cat. So Meow is actually a cat creature.
And Meow, tell me about him.
And yeah, right, meow.
Yeah.
So she or he is a cat-like creature that speaks human language, and in the instruction manual it says Meow is closely tied to Odin, another one of the characters. Meow is a pretty fair attacker, especially once you get I think it's like a silver fang or a silver claw.
Oh yeah,
Um,
he's a brutal friggin' attacker.
yeah, he's one of the better characters. And then has a really good healing spell and can suss out trapdoors. So like when you're in the
See,
dungeons, you can fall like down a level by stepping on a trapdoor, and there might be a door on the other side of it. Meow can actually deactivate the
oh,
traps.
same with the treasure chests. If you
Yes.
suspect that you've been having a good run of not having running into a trap treasure chest, you can actually have Meow use his trap spell to dearm it if there's one.
Damn. Wish I would have known that, because there
Yeah,
is an item that you need, at least one that you need, and the treasure chest still blows up. It like blows up and takes a bunch of your health and is like, "Oh, you got the crystal." It's like, "Oh, great, fuck you."
yeah. No,
And then we have Odin, who is the book or the manual says he is second in command to Alice and has also taken a vow to overthrow Lassic. He's an attacker only and is the only character that has no magic. Um,
yeah.
Odin kind of sucks. I didn't care for him too much.
He's good because he hits fairly hard, but yeah, other than that, like he's useless. He has absolutely no support ability, and
No.
his story was kind of lame.
Yeah,
Um,
he gets like turned to stone by Medusa, and so like
yeah, he's
throughout the
sitting in the Medusa's cave there, and it's like you got to find the talking cat person, and it just happens that Meow has a little vial of Medusa healing potion on around his collar,
yeah, they called it like Alcilin or something like that.
something
Also,
like that.
take your insulin. Um, Yeah, Odin also kind of seemed to be the one that was getting hit by enemies a bunch, where if you didn't watch out, he was the one who was low on health all the time, and he also had the
Yeah,
most
he really
HP.
was.
Yeah,
I wonder if that was by design. I wonder if he was like the tank that took all the hits so everybody else could attack.
yeah, he is the Butters of this game.
The butters. Gee, fellas.
Hey, fellas. And then we have Noah, who the manual calls an Esper wizard, who lives in Motavia, which is the second planet of the system, or the star system that we're in.
Uh,
He's a
this is
yeah.
this is funny because every Noah I know in real life is a girl,
Really?
and I this whole game I kept calling Noah she, and then all of a sudden it pop up as like he. I'm like, what?
I've never met a girl Noah. That's
Really?
crazy. But it's funny because the walkthrough I was reading had called Noah she, but then when I look up, in the manual and kind of got some information on Noah, they refer to Noah as he. So I think Noah is a male character.
Yeah.
Um, but he's a weak attacker, as most wizards or mages are in RPGs, but he's got the most RP. He's got the most MP, and he has a variety of spells which are very very useful, including some
Yeah,
attack
he
spells.
has the cure spell that Meow has as well, but you never want to use it because you want to
No.
keep his magic points like tip top.
Yep.
Because his attack spells are basically boss killers.
Yeah, wind is the best one.
Yeah, and then he has that spell to open some of the locked doors there, which I didn't realize until way too late.
Yeah, which really pissed me off because later in the game there's another there's two keys. There's the dungeon key, which is like your generic one that opens any locked door that you find, which at some point it's like, why are there so many fucking locked doors if I've got a key that already opens it? Like
Yeah, and
it was
again,
just
you got to
annoying.
open up your menu, go into
Yeah.
items, find the dungeon key where it is in the list,
Yeah.
every friggin' door.
It's just I at some point it was like, well, it was just probably cool looking for, the 80s RPG crowd. Um and then there's like a step up locked door that's got like a demon face on it, and you can get a like an upgraded, I think it's called like, I don't know, it's basically like a universal key that opens the strong doors and the regular dungeon doors. But until you get that, you do have to use Noah's MP to open those doors. And so if
Really,
you,
because I never found that upgraded thing that opened up the doors. I used or his MP all the time.
oh, that sucks because like right in the last, there's two items that you have to, or you can miss in the last tower before you get to the final sky tower or whatever, and that's one of them. There's an upgraded um, key, and it's really useful.
Hmm. Well, looks like I missed out on that one. And yeah, it takes what, 4 magic points per use, and then in the sky tower, I think there's 2 to 3 doors you have to open with it. So you've 12 MP gone right off the bat,
Yeah, it sucks because then you're limited to how many times you can use your wind spell against the boss.
which is a necessity.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, those are the characters. We talked a little bit about NPCs already. They're pretty fucking useless. I mean, they give you some clues in some places, but like any of the really weird, like ass pull quests that like you would never guess what to do, they don't help you with those. Like
No,
nothing anyone
and
says would help you.
that was my biggest problem with this game is there was no hint on what to do next. So it's you get to a point there, you find the guy you're looking for, and it's like
Yeah.
you go around, talk to everybody in town, and nobody changes really what they say. And it's like, well, okay, what do I do next? So you go start exploring and using the new items you got, and you find all of a sudden this level. So you go through this dungeon, and it turns out you're in Medusa's tower there. You kill her, and then you leave, and you carry on, finally figuring out what's going on, and then as you read through the walkthrough, it comes back and says, "Now go kill Medusa." But you
Oh
walk
yeah.
in the tower, and he's like, "I've already done this one."
Yeah, I did that with a boss called Dr. Mad.
Yeah,
And it was like, oh, don't fight Dr. Mad at this point because you're not leveled up enough. I was like, well, I kicked his ass. So
yeah, I just like walked right through him. Like, well, how were you playing this game?
yeah,
Like,
it's weird. You can definitely, and in the manual it does give that as a um kind of a positive. They put a positive spin on it. Like this is a, completely, not customizable because it is very linear, but it's like you can do things in pretty much any order you want. And it's like,
and that's
I guess.
great, and
Yeah.
I like that. But there's some stuff that you just don't figure out unless it's by accident, like that the ice digger can go through some of the mountains.
Yes, that was a bitch. And then like also sometimes there would be a door set into the wall instead of being at the end of the hallway. So the only way you would see it is if you randomly turned towards the wall, which you wouldn't normally do, and then it just
Well,
appears.
the mini map would
Yes.
show you that door, so that was kind of a nice thing. But the people playing the original
Oh,
game, yeah, it was kind of messed up because there's times there you wouldn't know. You just walk right by it, and it's not graphically powerful enough to have one scene with a door beside you.
right. And there are definitely at least 2 points in the game where if you don't turn yourself and face the door that's on the wall that you can't see unless you turn towards the wall, which you wouldn't normally do, you're not progressing any further in the game. Lassic, the one of the final bosses of the game, is behind one of those doors.
Yeah, and that If it wasn't, like I said, if it wasn't for that mini map that kind of filled in as you went along, I probably would have missed it 100 times.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
no point did I ever think to turn sideways down the middle of a hall to see if there was a door there.
And there were false walls too that were like hidden passages. And there is one NPC at some point that says something like, some walls are fake walls. And it's like, well, that really fucks with your head because I'm sure people just like bump themselves into every single wall throughout this whole thing looking for, and I'm sure it took hours and hours.
Yeah, and I don't know. It didn't take away from the game, but you're right. The original game really should have had something there to, like a beep or something to let you know that something was around you.
Or an item that would kind of like reveal it for, not reveal it, but like give you a hint. Like that would have been
Or they
cool.
should have developed today's modern graphic technology that could put the door as you pass by on the wall.
Yeah, there we go. That would have been the best. So let's get into the story of the game a little bit more here. The cool thing, one of the really cool things about this game, um, that you don't see in like a Dragon Quest or a Final Fantasy is planets. So this game takes place in the the Algol star system,
Yeah,
and you travel across three different planets. So, I mean, the planets themselves are pretty cliche sci-fi bullshit. Like there's a regular Earth-like planet, which is the one you start on, called Palma. The manual says that the planet is fully developed and that the Palmans have discovered space travel and allows them to travel to other planets in the Algol system. And then your second planet is Matavia, which is a desert planet. Surprise.
yeah, and there's ant lions all over this place.
Yes. You can't walk on them, but you can purchase a Land Rover and drive over them.
Yeah, and that
Um,
Land Rover is fairly useless.
yeah, it doesn't do anything except for drive over the ant lions. And that is one item for whatever reason that you cannot sell, but you can sell the ice digger, which is weird.
Yeah, and I don't know. I wish I'd never bought it because the only thing it did is just speed me up going from point A to point B. That's the only time I ever used it.
Yeah, the walkthrough I used actually said skip buying the Land Rover at all.
Oh, well, that's some good advice there.
Yeah.
Because you don't actually need it to go over the ant lions because everything you need to do by the time you find it, you can avoid the ant lions
Yeah,
as you walk from point A to point B.
yeah, you do get a hovercraft. So if you do want to cross some of those ant lions, I think there's like a lake nearby that you can just kind of hovercraft through, and then you're
Yeah.
fine. And then the third planet is Dazorus, which is furthest from the sun, and it's an ice planet.
Yeah.
So the planet has a native species called the Dazorans, which are little green guys with weird hats. And you travel through this planet via a network of caves, and the cities are accessible via tunnels. So I thought that was kind of it was a pain in the ass because it was extra shit to try to find your way through this planet. But I thought that that was really kind of an ice planety move to have like a
Yeah.
series of caves, and like the towns were like underground, like protected under a tunnel and stuff like that. I thought that was cool.
I originally, when I landed on that planet, thought I wouldn't be able to travel on the planet's surface and I'd do everything through tunnels, and boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
So, yeah, of these three planets, I mean, Palma is the one I like the most. It seemed to have, it had more to do on it. The other two just seemed there just to fill in the rest of the story.
Yeah, I think Matavia had like the least um dungeons on it. You spend quite a bit of time on Dazorus, like all in a
Yeah,
row.
near the end there.
Yeah, and there were some pretty tough parts. Just a lot of back and forth, but like there were a couple of tougher dungeons with some stronger
Yeah, there
monsters.
was one of the caves to get from between the mountain ranges there, and it had like three or four white dragons in it.
Yeah.
But by that point, again, severely over leveled, and they're just like smack them around.
Yes, and they give you a lot of experience points and money, mesitas.
Sita.
Um so yeah, so let's go through the just kind of the plot here. New To start with, obviously you start with Alice, and we know that her brother's been killed, so she's Um, she's going after King
She's
Lassic.
out for
She
revenge.
is out for revenge. So the beginning, and then kind of through Medusa's cave, I guess there's a lot of little like kind of fetch questy stuff that you have to do in the beginning. You'll first need to like um, grind a bit and
Yeah,
upgrade your shit. Like get your equipment settled.
yeah,
Um,
and that's pretty much par for the course for games of this era. And not to mention, this game you get lost fairly early in the game, so you tend to just unintentionally grind.
yes. And this is the part that we talked about before, where you have to talk to that dude at the secondhand shop in Scion, which is the next town over from Caminite, the one that you start in, and you have to like talk to him 3 times. And
Yeah, but
that's
there's no hint to it. There's
no.
not something saying this guy's stubborn, maybe press him a little. No, it's just you walk in, he's like, I don't want to talk to you. And it's like, okay, maybe I'll talk to you 2 more times.
So this is where I hadn't started looking at the walkthrough yet, because like I remember the first part of this game, and it turns out I absolutely did not.
No, I talked to him and then I started walking around. I went through Medusa's cave. I
Yes.
found Odin's statue there. Then I went through that other one where you find the claw for Meow.
Yep.
Like I did everything and I was about level 10. And then finally I said, screw it. If I'm going to get to the end of this, I'm going to need to start poking at a walkthrough. And the walkthrough was like, talk to him 3 times. I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
Yeah. Yeah. And he gives you the hint to what is I can't even remember what the fucking hint is, but you eventually get to travel to Matavia for the first time, and you trade some shit for
The
Meow.
pod, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Laconian pot. That was it. So that guy wants to charge you like, hey, you want this cat? And he's gonna charge you like more Masitas than you can carry, basically. And he's like, or you could trade me that weird pot. So you give him this weird little pot, and then he gives you Meow, and Meow has that Alsulin shit on her neck that you
Yeah.
can use to revive Odin. So then
And
you have to go back.
it's hilarious because you just get the pot from a random conversation with a guy in Kamet.
Yes, he just gives it to you. Oh no, I think the secret is there was something hidden in the warehouse, right? There
That's
was a quote
the
unquote
warehouse had
warehouse.
the dungeon key. That was
That's
later
right,
on.
yeah, the dungeon key, which is
No,
actually
this
very
was
useful.
literally you walk into a house there and he's like, I have a pot for you, and then you get the L pot.
Oh yeah, yeah, there it is. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, those two things. You need the dungeon key and that pot. Then you get Meow, and then you can go pick up Odin. And after that, I believe, is when you go back to Matavia, and they want you to talk to the governor there. Which at some point, I think there's another item in a cave somewhere called the pound cake, or like it's either pound cake or some sort of fucking cake. I don't know, but you have to give this cake to a robot who lets you go past so you can talk to the governor on Matavia.
Yeah. And I love the name of the robots when you fight them. And one's called Robot Cop.
Yeah, robot cop.
It's like obviously cashing in on the popularity of a certain franchise.
There is a lot of like you'll find a lot of derivative stuff in this. Like at one point you can at the weapon shop buy a lightsaber.
Yeah.
Little
Totally not stealing.
yeah. But anyways, he gives you a letter, and then tells you that there is a dungeon or a cave north of the city where you can find Noah the wizard. So you got the note, you go find Noah, and then he joins the party. Cool.
Yeah, and this is another one there. I didn't realize I got the letter, and then I ended up walking in the door, and there was no one. It's like, oh, I'm going to join you, and they're like, okay.
Yeah, and luckily it burns the letter off your inventory, so you don't have to
Yes,
carry it
God.
around the rest
Anytime
of the game.
something burned something out of my inventory that was stuck there, I was so happy.
Yeah, there were times though where like you used something and it just sat in your inventory. It's like, could I get rid of that now? I don't need it.
Yeah, like the road pass. It
Yes.
was good, but it really was unnecessary.
No. Yeah. And then you've got so you return back to Palma again after you get Noah, and you go to a town called Gothic, because someone tells you that if you investigate the manhole cover that's at the spaceport, you can go through like a sewer tunnel and end up in this like rundown town called Gothic.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
God,
No, Yeah, go ahead.
Once you get into Gothic there, that's when you learn about, Dr. Luveno there, and
Yep.
he's stuck in a prison or a mental facility, I can't remember which, and then
Yeah.
when you leave Gothic and you head south, there's a path in between some mountains and a path around the mountains. I
Right.
went in between the mountains there and ended up in the wrong spot
I
again.
did too. Yeah, you end up in, I think that's Medusa's tower, and it's for later in the game, and
Yeah.
the enemies in there will just like fuck you up. It's one of those instances of um like where you can accidentally stumble on something that's like way too strong for you.
Yeah, and I left that place pretty quickly and went back, and then later on in the game, I was like, I thought that was where I was supposed to go, and that's when I wiped out Medusa, so
Yeah. Yeah,
but,
that's yeah, because you were over leveled and then you just ended up doing it.
yeah, because you get lost in this game so often, the only thing you can do is walk around and hope to find something new, and the whole time you're just fighting and leveling up and fighting and leveling up, and then you got so much money that nothing's even a challenge anymore.
Right. Yeah, because you do stuff like the rest of this little kind of quest or this little chapter where you're in Gothic working with Dr. Levino is that you have to gather like his assistant and this robot called Hapsby. And to do that, you have to go north, and there's a couple of towns in the north where you can actually get some pretty useful items, but you have to walk unprotected across these like lava fields to get there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of counterintuitive. Like you just have to kind of power through it. And you end up with this stuff called polymaterial that you have to use on these piles of junk where you have to
Yeah,
kind of
you that's where
search
you
it.
get Haspy, the
Yeah, that's where you get the
pilot.
robot Hapsby. And I think, oh, I had the Laconian pot listed here, but that's not one of the items. But I think maybe the Land Rover or the
Oh,
hovercraft.
you get the hovercraft later on.
Yeah. Um, gosh, there's some other like there's some good weapons in the shops in some of these towns
Yeah,
to the
and
north.
this is a place where you could spend a little bit of time because the enemies were actually, paying out pretty good here.
Yes.
So you could, do a little bit of quick grinding and, just pay for all these weapons and make sure everybody was, like, tip top before you left.
Yeah. And then another, I think you can get the wand for Noah in this area. And one of the things that I found on the walkthrough that I used was if you like get an extra wand, equip one to Noah, and then just keep one in your inventory. And if you use it as a battle item, you escape the battle without having to use there's a spell called Bye, like BYE.
Yeah.
And you can save I just spammed that wand all the way through the last couple of dungeons because I wanted to get to the end with full health and full MP. And basically, whenever I would run into a random encounter, and these random encounter enemies are pretty fucking tough in these last dungeons, I would just go to my items with every character and use wand, and then whichever one of them was up first, they would just use wand and escape me.
Yeah, and I never did that trick, but I read about it in the walkthrough, and I just
It's
powered through to the end.
it's so useful. It saves you so much time.
Yeah, well, I just did that, I ended up, right at the door for the last boss and just burgered up and then walked in and got my ass handed to me.
Yeah. Oh man, I'd burger up right now. Um,
Alright, go. I'll wait, we'll
yeah,
wait.
here, pause the podcast. I'm gonna go
I'm
grab
not
a burger.
pausing you, we're gonna wait for you here just in silence,
Okay.
and people can just listen to me like
And then it becomes
every so often.
yeah, and then it becomes like an ASMR video where I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
chewing on my burger. Awesome. Oh, listen to that sound.
Alright,
Um,
let's get back on track here, you're distracting me.
yeah. Let's go to so once you get the rocket ship, like Luvino, I think is his name. Yeah. He repairs his rocket ship, you get Hapsby so he can pilot it for you.
Again, taking an item slot away from your,
Of course.
inventory.
Yeah, and he's always with you. Um there then you go to you have three different options that you can fly to, and the first one you want to go to is a town called Uzo on Matavia, so it's south of the town that you were in when you first went to Matavia. um, and there are a couple of little quests to do here. Some really important items that you get at this point in the game. You get the Laconian sword, which is
Yeah.
the most powerful weapon that Alice can carry.
Yeah, and it's like a mandatory, you have to have this to be Lazic. kind of weapon because Laconian is something that can hurt him.
Yes, it's like mithril or whatever, like it's a mystical or, strong metal.
That's a different
I
franchise.
know it is, but or adamantine. There you go.
Oh yeah, no, that's a different franchise
I
again.
know, but I'm making comparisons here. Um, and then another thing that you can get, Noah meets up with at some point in one of the dungeons, his like old um, teacher or master or whatever, and then they have like a wizard battle off. This is like one of the only times that one of your characters is just like singled out for a one-on-one duel, and you just like shoot magic at each other until he faints and gives you this thing called the frayed mantle.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, that's his best armor.
yeah, pretty much. And it was how do I put this in a polite manner? It was unnecessary.
Yeah,
It
like
was
shooting wind at him and
yeah, like it's all you did is you just took your best spell at the time, which is wind, and then you just fired wind at him, and he would put fire on you. Then you fire wind at him, and then be like, "Oh, you've grown so much."
yeah, so it's like a lot of with the sound effects, it's like and then it's done.
Yeah, pretty much.
Um
But
yeah,
no, no, it's
but the frayed mantle is good.
yeah, well, like the item you got was fantastic. Like, don't get me wrong, getting somebody's best armor is always worth the trip. But
Oh yeah,
I don't know, there could have been another way, maybe a complex narrative or something they couldn't fit onto the cartridge.
right. And there was also another weird little side quest here where there's an item that you can get back on Palma if you are kind of looking around with the hovercraft once you get it, and you get this gas shield. And what you use that for is you take it to Matavia, and there's some like poison gas on the ground. And if you have the gas shield in your inventory, then you can walk through the gas without getting hurt.
Yeah, and you get the clue that leads you to the mirror shield, which was
That's right.
again, it was in a dumb place. Like it took me forever to find it because I didn't realize you could search.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it's where do you search? It's on the island, and there's an antlion in the middle of this lake on an island, and you fight the antlion like 100 times, and nothing happens.
Because
You
you
don't
keep
get the
stepping on
shield.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like you have to search in the lower right corner of the ant line. It's like, why the fuck would I do that? Like,
yeah. It's just kind of but this is what you need to beat Medusa.
yes.
And once you have this, Medusa's not that hard, and hence why it was easy to beat her when I ran up that tower.
Yeah. So basically, what happens is like you got the mirror shield equipped to Odin, and Medusa like misses every single one of her attacks.
Yeah, and no, it was like finding it. There's also a flute you find in Gothic the same way, but that one seems a little more obvious because it's like a lone tree at the end of a path.
Yeah, and one of the NPCs tells you to look by the tree or whatever. And that
Yeah,
flute is
but
really useful. It helps you you can exit like when you get to the end of a dungeon and you're like, balls deep in this dungeon and you found your item but you're kind of beat up, you can just use this flute and go right back to the beginning.
yeah, and again, I didn't know what the flute did because there was no description, so I ended up just using Meow's exit magic.
You can do that too.
Meow or yeah,
Meow.
Meow exited, and Alice flew you back to the last church you're at.
Yes, and that fly is awesome. Oh, and let's talk about the churches for a second, because if one of your characters dies, you can resurrect them at the church, but then they charge you a bunch of money to do it. It's like,
Yeah, just like real church.
aren't you a fucking church? Anyways,
Yeah,
um, oh, also just one last note on Motavia. Going west from Uzo, you can go all the way to a like mountain range that's like just there's this kind of vertical mountain range and it's just forms a wall. But if you walk up and down along that wall, you can fight these sandworms, and they're really awesome because they drop a good amount of masitas, and that's a good easy place to grind for masitas when you need them.
yeah, and that's for the seasoned veteran that knows the story, not for the person who gets lost and makes his money the old-fashioned way of looking for what to do next.
Yes. um, yeah. So at that point, I was following the guide, and it was like you're gonna want to buy this diamond armor that's available in one of the stores. pretty early on in the game, they kind of entice you with this diamond armor that's really expensive, and you can grind for cash there and go buy it. And then I think Alice.
That was something like I'm gonna kind of bring something back here, go off topic a bit, and that was something I liked about the Ages collection was if you hit the plus button, because I was playing on Switch, if you
Yeah.
hit the plus button, it brings up a menu and you can actually see all the different weapons and armors and who they can be equipped to and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that was amazing. I loved using that little grid.
Yo, I used it every time because there's
Yep.
no other way to know what can be equipped to who. Like there's a few items that can be equipped to multiple players, but not a lot of them.
Right. So then it would help you know, like, well, I don't want to buy more than one of these
Yeah,
because,
exactly. So you're not wasting your money.
yeah. And then after, so moving on after Uzo, that's when you just when it's time to go to this town called Skewer on
Ski-
Dezoris. So it's time to go to the ice planet. So you have to go back to your ship with Hapsby and fly to Dezoris. This I thought was one of the more convoluted quests in the game because, as you mentioned before, there's a spot where you get this ice digger truck that has these little drills on the front, and it can drill through some mountains, but not all.
Yeah,
And
so
the ones
you're
that you can,
basically
yeah,
trial and error the whole time.
very trial and error. And the mountains that you can drill through, it like kind of crushes them. They look absolutely. They're no different. Like they could be the same color, but maybe the pattern is different or slightly different color. I don't know. They throw you absolutely no hints. And there's
No, it's
yeah.
I only found it by accident.
Yeah, I looked at the walkthrough this time because I was like, I want to kind of get through it, but um, they kind of give you a general direction, like head southwest after this tunnel, and there should be some weak mountains kind of down there. Um, so you have to. We talked about this when we talked about this planet, but you have to travel through these series of caves, which is cool and ice planety. But there's a lot of really tough monsters. Um, you do have to use that digger to crush through some of the mountains and get to at least one dungeon, and then you get this item called the Amber Eye in Corona, which is important later. And then you get this item called an Eclipse Torch in one of the dungeons, and you have to take it to a tree
Yeah.
somewhere on the map, accessible only by an ice digger, and it's like in this random section between two caves, and then you kind of go south and it's like, oh, it turns out these mountains down here can be crushed and there's a fucking random tree down here, and you use the torch while you're on the screen with the tree, and it gives you this item called a nut of lerma, which you need to beat the game. And it's
You
very
have to have the L pod again because the nut gets put
yes.
inside the L pod.
Yes, you get the pot back from that doc. That's why I had the pot written back up there, because you have to fight someone in one of those towns when you go through the lava, and he gives you that pot back, and you need the pot to put the nut of Lerma in or whatever. And yeah, again, it's like it's something you could easily miss and still kind of go through part of the end game, and you would not be able to progress because you don't have that item, and you would have
Yeah.
no idea where to go back to get it.
No, I don't remember where he got the pot back. I just remember that some guy's like, "Oh, hey, I have a pot," and he gives it back to you. Like,
Yeah.
there's no quest for it. There's no trade. You're not buying it back.
No, you get it at the first town. You get it, and then you trade it for Meow, and then you get it back from the first time you fight Doctor Mad.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, he gives it to you for beating him or whatever. But it's like
Oh, okay. Like,
somehow
I
he ends
guess I
up with
didn't
it.
notice.
Yeah, you get it back from him. um, so that's kind of, now that you've got this nut, um, you can kind of start going into the end game,
But
which
before you do that,
yeah,
there's a couple of items you can get with the what was that called? That strong material that you got in that sword, the Laconian stuff.
yes, yeah,
Sorry. So, anyways, yeah. So you can go back and go find the Laconian shield, the Laconian axe, and
yeah.
then I believe there was armor.
There's an armor that I think we talked about. Um, the shield, I believe, is on like some kind of random island. Yeah, back on Palma. So you have to get in the hovercraft and kind of tool around in the water until you find there's like a temple tower looking thing on an island, and it's in there. And then I think the axe was somewhere else. I can't exactly remember where the axe is, but like
No, it just there are
those are.
side quests. You had to go get them.
But again, like the end of the game is going to be much more difficult if you don't have those items.
Yeah.
Um, so getting back to Palma after you've completed your tasks on Dezoris, which is nice because you never have to go back there. Um, you go to this place called Baya Malay, which is north of the town of Sion.
Yeah, and you see it fairly early on in the
Yeah,
game. Like you just can't get into it.
yeah, it's like a walled stronghold. There's a locked door that has to be unlocked with one of Noah's spells. But like I
Conveniently
mentioned,
called open.
yeah, it's called open. There is a way, like I mentioned before, to get a master key that allows you to open all of those like demon crest doors, so you can save some of your MP, which is good. And this is where once you get through this prison, there's no enemies in the prison, but it can be a little tricky because there's like a robot cop in there, and he kind of hassles you a little bit. Um,
Yeah, he's like, "Do you have a road pass?" And you're like, "Yeah, I do." And he's like, "That's a fake." And he kicks you into a jail on the second floor, and then
and
you
then
end
you
up
just,
having to say no, and then you just fight him and wipe him off the face of the planet and
yeah, and then
walk
just move
by.
on. Yeah. Um, So then once you get through the little like prison and the gate of this like fortress, past the wall or whatever, there's a little tunnel and then like a brief lava flow which you can ride your hovercraft over, which is nice. And then you get to it's just called I think it's just called Baya Malay.
Yeah.
And that's the tower, the second to last kind of tower of the game. And there are a couple of items that you can get in here or easily miss that will really fuck with the rest of your game. One of them is that key, so you can get that master key. That's hidden in there somewhere. And then there's also a place where you talk to some dude, and he asks you a series of 5 kind of weird,
Oh
arbitrary
yeah, yeah.
questions. Yeah, and
It, it's was he like a fortune teller or something like that? And you have to believe him, and then you
yeah,
have 5 questions, and you have to answer like yes, 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 no, no.
yes, that's exactly it. And he's asking stuff like, "Do you believe my prophecies?" Yes, yes, yes. You're
Are
like,
you searching for this person? You're
"Yeah,
like, yes. And it's like, do you believe I've been telling the truth? And you're like, no. And he's like, oh, okay. And then you ask the last question. And he's like, oh, here's an item.
yeah." And he's like, "Oh, here's a crystal." Then you just kind of leave. And so once you get that, um, and that key, I believe, and I think the key is in a treasure chest that's booby trapped, which is
Oh,
bullshit.
I stopped opening treasure chests halfway through this level.
Yeah, I did too. And like when some of the chests that you get from enemies that you beat are also booby trapped, so I just stopped opening anything unless I absolutely needed to. But anyways, you get through this tower. It is kind of a twisty turny place. It's pretty easy to miss the staircase that you go up to kind of set off the chain of little staircases to get you to the top. But once you get to the top, this is where you need that nut that you got into Zorus. You give to Meow, and she like transforms into like a flying cat.
Yeah. And then you have a good boss battle with a gold dragon.
Yes, and it's like the walkthrough that I was looking at was like, don't use any magic on the gold dragon, and if the gold dragon like kills anyone or you have to use magic, like start over, like save before and start over. It's like the gold dragon was a pushover.
Oh, yeah. Just
Um,
straight up attacked him. And then that was it.
yeah, and I think it barely hit me. Like it would hit Alice, but she had like whatever souped up armor and shield, and she only lost like 1 hit point, and then it missed a bunch of times, and I just kicked its ass.
Yeah. And this is
Um,
consistent with the game up to this point. There was no boss that really gave a challenge.
no, because you were usually over leveled and
Yeah.
over equipped and whatever. But then you get to the I think it's called the Sky Palace or something like that.
Air Castle.
Air Castle, that's right. What is that? Oh, okay, yeah, the nut is what you can completely miss. Then you go through the Air Castle, which is kind of a again kind of like a uselessly twisty turny It's pretty straightforward, but then you fight Lassic, um, and
And
he can be very challenging if you didn't get that crystal that random fucker in the Baya Malay gives you. If you do not hold that crystal while you are fighting Lassic, he will absolutely rip you to shreds.
yeah, and if you're holding the crystal again, not a challenging boss fight.
Yeah, he's pretty easy if you have the crystal. And that was one thing that the first time I played this game last winter, I did not have that goddamn crystal. And I had to exit the whole thing, go all the way down to the bottom, and go back and find that dude and get the crystal and make my way all the way back up.
Yay.
Yeah. And I didn't know that wand trick when I first played it, so it was really grindy again.
I
Um,
never used the wand. It was fine.
yeah, it can be fine, but like I said, it just for me this time I was under a time crunch. I finished it today by I spammed that wand.
Hey, if it works, right?
Yeah, and so you beat Lassic and that should be it, right?
You'd think that.
Yeah, but then they say go back and see the governor on Matavia, which Matavia, according to the manual, is a colony. So I don't know why this guy is so goddamn important. But you go back there, and there's instead of talking to the governor, you go down a trapdoor, and you're in another really long but very straightforward dungeon. And you get to the end where you find
Dark
um,
Fours.
dark force, or like dark fowls is what they called him on the screen.
Oh yeah, Dark
Um,
Fowls.
just a complete ass pull. This guy is like
Yeah,
a super
this
boss.
is where the game takes a complete 180 in the difficulty curve.
Yes,
Like
he's like,
this guy hits twice per turn and he hits hard or soft or really medium. There's no real telling how hard he's going to hit you because sometimes he'd hit Alice for like 1 hit point,
yeah,
then the next time it'd be for 60.
yes. It was such a weird, like it was so hard to gauge who needed to be healed and when. You For every enemy, including the bosses throughout the whole game, you see their hit points in the upper corner, so you can see how much left you have. This is the only boss that doesn't, and he's got 400 some hit points, so he's one of the strongest single enemies in the entire game.
And he dodges everything.
He dodges every physical attack, but
Yeah,
the magic attacks you really have to focus, and that's why it's so important to have all of your MP going into the boss battle, because Alice needs to be shooting fire. Noah needs to be shooting wind. Meow needs to be healing, and then Odin kind of maybe can score a hit every now and then with the axe.
yeah, and then you run out of magic because you're going to run out of magic before you finish him off. So you just have
Absolutely.
to spam the attack and hope to hell that you can hit him enough to kill him. And I never did.
Yeah, I actually I took two stabs at him. The first time he ended up I kind of miscalculated how much time I had left and just kind of got unlucky, and he killed Noah, which is absolutely unacceptable because I needed his wind. And the second time I did, it's whenever you beat this guy, it's like you're out of MP, your team's kind of beat up, um, and you're just kind of like limping across the finish line because you're not really ever sure how much you have left against him.
Yeah, and it was kind of I didn't like it. I didn't like how steep the curve was, and the fact that again you can't replenish your magic, and once you run out of it, you're out of it. And I was
Yeah.
using Noah to open up doors and stuff.
Oh yeah, that'll really screw you over if you have to
Yeah,
use Noah to open up any doors in the last boss little dungeon or whatever. There's a couple of those demon crest doors. You're not going to be able to use wind enough times.
yeah. Well, you couldn't use it enough time, anyways. I mean, between wind and fire and the hits I got, there was absolutely no way I was ever going to kill that guy. I probably had him down to like 1 hit point, and then he just like nope and killed me.
Yeah, stupid thing.
Yes, very, very frustrating.
But in the end, if you beat him, then the actual governor comes back and is like, "Oh, guess there's a evil spirit. Do you want to be the queen?" And Alice says yes, and roll
Or no,
credits.
you can't you answer no on that,
Yeah,
and
you can.
and nothing changes.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it would change it. I can't imagine that saying no would do anything in this
Yeah,
game.
the freedom of choice, right?
Or they would just say, "You've selected yes."
Are you sure you don't want to be queen? No. Are you sure you don't want to be queen?
Yeah,
No.
it'd probably get you in like a loop like that where you just have to be like, fine, fucking yes. Ask me three
Fine, I'll
times and
rule all
finally.
over existence.
Yeah. So anything else on this game? I mean, there weren't that many like weird little like challenges or puzzles, but I would say like the dungeons themselves, especially like if you were playing this at the time it was released, the original 8-bit version of this game, the player would definitely need to map out the dungeons by hand.
Yeah,
Uh,
which isn't necessarily a bad thing because since the
no,
dungeons are very graphable, like every step is a square.
yes,
Um,
and it
it would
looks
just be
great.
time consuming, but it might actually be kind of fun in a way if you're into that.
Yeah, I think this would be a really fun experience to have had as a like an adolescent or kid back in 1987. I was obviously not old enough to graph paper anything in 1987, but I think that this would be really fun.
Yeah, and neither was I. Like I was 7 years old when this game came out, so there's no way I was going to grab graph paper and figure it out. I'd be stuck and probably walk away from it.
Yeah. Um, so another, yeah, and then just another like little challenge, I guess, as I would say, the trap doors, the doors that we were talking about that are set into the walls where you'd have to like turn towards it in order to see it. False walls, there were some false walls that you could just walk through, and there'd be like treasure chests full of masitas and stuff. And then booby trap um, treasure chests, those sucked. I got so irritated every time one blew up.
The explosion chest sucked. The one that shot like this the spear out at you or whatever. Those
Yeah,
ones weren't terrible because those would damage only one character, but the explosions would knock half your health hit points away.
yeah, from every character. Just really irritated the shit out of me. So that's where I was like, I'm done. I'm not opening anything anymore
No,
unless I'm grinding for masitas. Um, enemy sprites all looked really cool. I think some of my favorites were there was like a sorcerer that had this like crazy looking mask and a robe.
oh yeah, yeah,
The Titan was kind of cool.
yeah. The Titan was a big boy.
Yeah, most of the dragons were pretty rad, especially the gold one with the wings spread.
Well, the gold one was the only one different than the other
Yeah,
dragons. The rest were just palette swaps.
yeah, but that like the spread wings and you're like fighting them in the sky was kind of cool. Um, and then another one that I liked was there was an octopus at one point that you could find on like one of the sandy beach parts of Palma, and that looked pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think they paid out too. I
Yeah, they
remember
did.
because I remember fighting a few of them.
Yeah. Oh, and Dark Falls, like the Dark Force, whatever the final boss, his sprite is big and cool looking.
Yeah, he was
He's a fucker.
definitely a menacing boss
Yeah.
compared to the rest of them. So
Um,
big there wasn't even room to put his hit points in the corner.
that's right. Yeah, that's why. They were just trying to save space for his cool sprite.
Aesthetic reasons.
Let's see. Anything else to mention here? I think we already talked about like the stacked enemies, but like some of the enemies like you would encounter on the screen randomly would be like harder than a boss battle. So if you were to find like
Yeah,
the sorcerer and you had like two or three of them to contend with, I would try to get out of that type of battle because they could do like a thunder attack that would hit everyone for like 40 damage.
yeah, those are the ones that were pretty much like damn near unbeatable if you weren't high enough level. But it was nice that they didn't take an enemy like the dragons or the titans and stack them up.
Yeah, I think you could get two titans at most, but the dragons were always like a one dragon at a time.
Yeah, and like the dragons are easily beatable, but if you had two or three of them, yeah, you'd be pretty much screwed. They like you said, they would be harder than any of the boss battles.
Yeah, for sure. Um yeah, so that can be tough. That was why like that trick that I found with the wand uh in order to escape was really helpful in trying to save myself for the bosses at the end cuz like like we mentioned some of the random encounters could potentially kind of fuck you over.
Yeah, especially in that last level on your way to not fart, fight Dark Falls.
Yeah.
He, well, the enemies in that level were pretty much the toughest in the game, which, you know, makes sense. You're in the last level.
Yeah.
But they would not kill you, but they would hurt you pretty bad by the time you got to the last door.
Yeah, and then you would just basically not have enough left in the tank to actually face who you're there to face.
Yeah.
um so I think we talked enough about bosses and enemies and everything. So why don't we score this thing? Brian, what kind of score out of 10 are you going to give Fantasy Star?
Well, it's going to be fairly good. Like I said, I had a lot of fun with this, and I can see the appeal of it from like an 80s kid sort of lens.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it probably, I'm going to give it a 7.
Nice. Okay. That's actually what I gave it.
Oh, okay. Well, would
Uh
you look at that?
yeah, I gave it a 7.0. It does some really cool stuff, especially for a game of the time. I would say definitely if you want to try this game, don't be a hero. Play the Sega Ages version.
Yeah.
It still requires a guide and a lot of patience, but it's just a really fun,
And
just
that's one
retro
of the
JRPG.
parts where it lost points for me is the fact that I had to go to a walkthrough. There was no
Yeah,
way for me to really figure out what was going on until I got the walkthrough. Then the damn impossible increase in the final boss battle,
yeah, for
and
sure.
then just some housekeeping around the game. That's where it kind of lost the the score for me.
Yeah, I would, if I could give this game a comparable, if anyone's played Breath of Fire, the first one, I think that there are a lot of similarities between those two games. I think obviously Breath of Fire came out a few years after Phantasy Star and so does some extra things, but I think the general vibe of the game is pretty similar.
Yeah, neither game tells you what to do next.
Yes. Yes. Not in the slightest. And then it also like doesn't end when you think it's going to and all that shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Breath of Fire is one we should talk about at some point too.
I've done that already with somebody, and I'm not ready. I'm not there yet to talk about it again.
You need to heal some more.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't replay it again. I would just like read up on it and kind of remember.
It's the worst thing. The short version is it's a really fun game, but it gets in its own way.
Yeah, quite a bit.
And like I said, I'm playing Breath of Fire 2 for that same guy I talked to about it. And Breath of Fire 2 is better, but so far it's not really making a case of being better than the first game.
Okay,
So,
is it up to its same bullshit?
well, we'll see how it goes. I haven't really sat down and given it a good proper go yet. So
All
once I
right.
do, I'll be able to tell you.
All right. Well, we also need to give it a ranking in our tier list.
Oh, that's true.
This one, just due to the kind of innovative nature of the way that they set up the game and everything, I put it in the B tier. It's definitely not. It's not A tier. It's definitely not S tier. But there are some things that keep it out of the A tier. But just for its time, I think it's just a really fantastic game, and I think it should be in the B tier.
I'm not going to fight you on that one because for a game in the late 80s, like an RPG, if you compare it to all the RPGs from that era, this one's actually, it really does kind of stand out on its own. So I
Yeah,
agree.
it did.
Putting it in the B tier is the way to go.
Yeah, Fantasy Star did a lot of things that Nintendo don't. You're like,
uh,
you fucker.
there, I'm sorry, I'm busy. I can't record tonight, Sam.
Yeah. Oops, I lost this recording. uh,
Some hard edits about to be done.
yeah. You're gonna bleep me out for like the last.
Might
Uh,
take that Super Mario RPG Booster Tower lobby music there, and they'll just be used to be
yeah.
my guest
Technical
host.
technical difficulties.
Yeah. I'll
All
teach
right.
you.
All right. Well, should we wrap this up? And what are we talking about next week, Brian?
Next week could be our first milestone episode, the uh, 10th episode, which, not a huge milestone, but considering that we've made it 10 episodes without getting angry at each other, I think it's a milestone. So we're going to be talking Super Mario RPG. We've actually already recorded the episode and it's already ready to go. So you'll hear it after this one, but we recorded it before.
Yes, we're
So
going to have already been earlier talked about RPG Mario.
are you okay, Sam? Do you just have a stroke?
I tried to I got broken as I tried to rationalize that sentence.
We thing now words hard.
Yeah.
All right, no, I'm not making fun of you. I've been there too.
And if you're following along with us, this is episode 9, but episode 11, we will be talking about Desert Strike and Jungle Strike.
Yeah, and that'll be our first actual game we start playing in the new year.
Yes, so I'm excited to play that. I like that game, even if it's pretty hard.
Oh yeah, it'll be a good time.
All right. Well, from all of us here at Retrotopia, have a great week and have a happy new year. I hope you had a happy new year.
Yeah, me too. All right, take care, everybody.
Bye bye.